Beginning as a post-punk outfit inspired by the likes of Elvis Costello, Joy Division, and the Buzzcocks in 1977, The Cure embraced a peculiar brand of musicianship on their first three albums, Three Imaginary Boys, 17 Seconds, and Faith. In 1981, after Faith hit the shelves, frontman Robert Smith decided to spearhead the band's burgeoning gothic overtones that they'd explored on 17 Seconds and Faith into a record of its own, spanning the likes of LSD-driven frenzies, manic alcoholism, and personal depression into an 8-track record that would pave the road for gothic rock, the emo subculture, and kickstart The Cure into an iconic alternative rock group. That record was the chilling and brutal Pornography, released May 4th, 1982. Today, we're going to take a look at it. As a self-confessed emo, with heavy quotations around that, it should come as no surprise that The Cure is one of my favorite bands of all time. I've known of their existence for a long time now, dating back to somewhere around 5 years ago. However, until last fall, I had never really given the group that much attention. Sure, I knew the songs from their 1989 album Disintegration that broke them big. Love Song, Pictures of You, you get the idea. But beyond that, I had never pursued them as a group, not even knowing the names of their albums beyond Disintegration. That is until my good friend introduced me to them formally through their 1985 classic, The Head on the Door, from which point on, I got obsessed. Pornography by far stands out as my favorite Cure studio album, but I might need to explain why. So without any further ado, let's begin. Firstly, the album takes a big leap in a new direction for the band. Previously defined by up-tempo, somewhat pop-infused guitar riffs, and erratic yet familiar vocals from Smith, Pornography immediately throws these prior concepts out the window with the dark and gloomy opening notes of 100 Years. Smith's nihilistic opening lines cementing the status even further. I mean, how much more disturbing can you get when your album's opening lyrics are, "It doesn't matter if we all die"? The album sessions give more insight into the self-destructive and demented overtones of the album. Like I mentioned in the intro of this video, Pornography's 3-month sessions were only made even more intense by the band's rampant LSD use and almost solely drinking alcohol. Smith recalled the band leaving a pile of empties, as he called it, a mountain of beer cans and 40s that the band told the janitors to leave where it sat in the studio. They slept in the office of Fiction Records, the record label, and spent about 4 hours in the studio each day. Furthermore, Smith had been battling depression and mental exhaustion, feeling the after effects of the nearly 200 days a year touring the band had been doing. He later stated, "I had two choices at the time, which were to either completely give in, commit suicide, or make a record out of it and get it out of me. Songs like Siamese Twins and its spiritual successor, The Figurehead, my personal favorite song on the record, explore the deviance of sexual frustration, mental breakdown, and murder. The entire album reached your ears like the diary of a mentally broken man who has gallons of dirt in his chest and his mind, a whole 12 years before Trent Reznor would take this concept into a fully fledged album and create Nine Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral, which is an album hard to imagine in the first place without the underlying influence that Pornography created for goth subcultures. The nihilism of 100 Years rippled itself throughout the album, especially on A Strange Day, a song that itself speaks 1,000 words of apocalypse and despair, something The Cure is able to do so well with their vivid songwriting and instrumentation. The album's conclusion, the title track, does sound like a drab and boring experimental piece on the surface, but it proves to be something much more intense and meaningful beyond that. 3 minutes of film and television samples before Smith enters the track alongside the instrumentation, croaking desperately of the perils of having to resort to prostitutes to feel sexual pleasure, a callback to Siamese Twins, saying multiple times that it's too late and that he must fight this sickness and find a cure, a tongue-in-cheek jab at the name of the band. The dark and explosively depressive story of Pornography ends with a gleam of optimism, something uncommon in the music of this kind, with the final lines of the album implying that all of the disturbing acts and thoughts portrayed have been in a natural sickness, so to speak. It's a realization that something is wrong and an indication that the road to recovery is near. After the album was released, the seething tension between the band that had been occurring during the tumultuous recording sessions came to a head, resulting in Smith nearly breaking up The Cure as a whole. He took a year off from the band and temporarily joined Susie and the Banshees, sparsely recording and performing with The Cure, if at all. Smith returned to England, drummer Lol Tolhurst went to France, and bassist Simon Gallup quit the band entirely. However, by 1983, The Cure was back to recording, and by 1985, Gallup was back in the group. Although poorly received by critics at the time of its release, Pornography proved to be The Cure's most commercially successful album of the time, peaking at number 8 on the UK music charts. Although it took nearly 15 years and several reappraisals, Pornography is now regarded as one of The Cure's finest albums and one of the most influential alternative rock records of all time. Robert Smith defines Pornography as being the first of 3 essential Cure albums, the other 2 being the aforementioned Disintegration and the 2000 return to form Bloodflowers. Pornography remains a cult classic among Cure fans and stands the test of time as one of the most enduring records from one of rock's most intensely emotional groups. At the time of this recording, Pornography currently sits at number 8 on my top 10 albums of all time. And with that, I give The Cure's Pornography a 10 out of 10.